Good day, everyone. Let me first apologize for my late appearance today, but I hope I can provide you with information that made it worth waiting for me now. Dear friends, a lot has happened since I spoke last to you 2 weeks ago, both on the ground in the East and at the political level. I will, however, try to keep it short today. The sides have continued to breach the ceasefire. We have recorded the most flagrant and violent breaches in the wider Donetsk area. The most intense violence was recorded there on the evening of the 21st of February, with over 300 explosions recorded around the airport. The wider Holivka area has remained violent too. During the evening hours of 23rd of February, our monitors in Debaltseve heard approximately 50 explosions within half an hour. Of particular note has been increased violence around Yasinovata. On 22nd February, for example, our monitors heard there more than 140 explosions around the town caused by mortar, automatic grenade launchers, rocket-propelled grenades and other weapons. Overall, though, we have noted a slight decrease in the use of artillery and mortars. However, and more worryingly, we've observed a greater use of multiple launch rocket systems. This Wednesday, for instance, our monitors in non-government controlled Debaltseve heard approximately 40 multi-launch rocket system rounds being fired there in a matter of a few minutes. We have in fact observed the presence of these multiple launch rocket systems in violation of the respective withdrawal lines as defined in the Minsk package of measures. On Sunday, for instance, we saw 8 of these grads near government-controlled Ivanivka. We have also noted an increased presence of other proscribed weapons inside the security zone. For instance, one of our unmanned aerial vehicles spotted 11 main battle tanks in an open-air compound in a residential area of Donetsk city. The presence of such weapons is explicitly restricted under the addendum to the package of measures. As well as seeing them in the security zone, we also noted continued presence of weapons in permanent storage sites, as well as weapons missing from these sites, both in permanent storage sites and heavy weapons holding areas. Over the weekend, at one Ukrainian Armed Forces permanent storage sites, we noted 32 tanks, 1 mortar, and 7 anti-tank guns missing. At the so-called DPR site, we noted 10 howitzers and 5 mortars missing. In such a context, civilians, in particular children, are as ever paying a heavy price. We learned, for instance, that civilians in the Petrovsky district in Donetsk city, including children, are staying in a shelter on a permanent basis because their houses have been destroyed. Children in Shovanka had for a time been unable to go to school as the village was caught between the closed checkpoint at the time in Mayorsk and the contact line, blocking their access to their school located in Zaitsev. In Staromikhailivka, we observed damage to a school assessed as caused by an explosive tracer bullet. And in Kholominsky, we actually observed craters just 60 meters away from a school. There is a reason why the children in the Petrovsky district in Donetsk have been unable to sleep in their own beds. All across the contact line, civilians are getting caught up in the fighting, largely because the sides insist on positioning hardware close to residential areas. Also, in Holminsky, for instance, one woman sitting in her apartment came within inches of being killed when a shell exploded in a nearby room. As ever, mines and unexploded ordnance remain a constant threat to everybody on the ground. This week we monitor the aftermath of a particular horrendous incident. 3 Ukrainian servicemen were killed in Luhansk region on Tuesday when their vehicles slid off the road and detonated an anti-tank mine. At the very moment this happened, I was in Minsk alongside Ambassador Apakan, who was chairing a session of the security working group within the trilateral contact group. We were in fact trying to facilitate an agreement on demining and on the prohibition of live fire exercises. I'm happy to report some success. It is too early to see the results on the ground, but I hope Tuesday's fatal mine accident is the last one of its kind. Basically, we have an agreement on mine action and the prohibition of live fire exercises within the security zone. The sides have agreed to map, mark and fence off mined areas in 12 previously designed priority areas. And crucially, and that is new, they have agreed to do so along approach roads and at checkpoints leading to and crossing the contact line. The areas have been selected because repair work on damaged essential civilian infrastructure needs to take place there, and of course to ensure the safety of people crossing in those areas. I hope this will be the start of wider demining efforts throughout the conflict zone. They also have agreed to stop live fire training within the 30-kilometer security zone. Now, dear friend, this is all not perfect. We still observe most exercises involving dozens of tanks and artillery systems taking place in areas just outside the security zone, in areas not controlled by the government. But it is a start. At least, if adhered to, it will go some way towards making the security zone a place where there is in fact security. Therefore, I'm cautiously optimistic. We have seen the sides agreed before, and you know that, and we have seen them to fail before. But with an estimated 10,000 people dead, and after 2 years of fighting, I sense the sides are willing to make more serious efforts to bring an end to this conflict. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission will certainly do its part. It will support all involved in their efforts towards normalization. We will monitor and report impartially and objectively on progress made in implementing these decisions. We are currently finalizing our response, but we will, for sure, specifically document where mined areas have been marked and fenced. We will also continue documenting ceasefire violations, including in prioritized areas, especially when civilian crossing is compromised, and when demining and repair work and additional mine action, namely fencing and marking, is prevented or delayed. When I speak next to you, I hope I have some progress to report on this matter. Meanwhile, I refer you to our daily reporting. I do have some very concrete progress to report. Since we last spoke, Marina Cherenkova, the head of the NGO Responsible Citizens of Donbass, has been released by the so-called DPR. Upon release, however, Marina was essentially expelled from the areas not controlled by the government. It is uncertain what the implication of her expulsion will have for her organization. It is an implementing partner of international humanitarian organizations that are prevented by the so-called DPR from operating in areas controlled by them. The need for people like Marina and her organization should be obvious. I hope the so-called DPR soon realizes this. Since I last spoke to you as well, the so-called DPR also released a number of other captives, Ukraine Armed Forces personnel, in exchange for detainees held by Ukrainian authorities. I'm of course very happy for the people involved and their families and friends. Like what we saw in Minsk this week, it also shows that there is common ground between the sides. Those of us involved in facilitating and encouraging the sides will continue to identify other areas of common ground and we will continue to ensure mutually beneficial outcomes for the sites and the people of Donbass and the rest of the country. We do not have to continue with a destructive zero-sum approach. If anything, this week has proven that. As usual, at the end here, I would like to give you the latest mission numbers. As of today, the mission has 711 monitors, of whom 578 are deployed to the east. In addition, there are 290 Ukrainian national staff and 82 other international staff working for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Thank you.
Дякую, пане Хуп. У нас є час на одне лаконічне запитання. Колеги, чи є...
We have around a series of questions and comments.
Almost half of Ukrainians commended the work of OSCE mission in Donbass negatively in accordance to sociological research carried out by Gershanin Institute. Thank you.
Thank you. It is very good that people take note of our work. We welcome any constructive criticism, and we have done so throughout the 2 years we have been in operation. The fact that people see us with critical eyes is important. We are the only international organization that is able to provide the public of Ukraine with objective and verified information. And it is important for us to know the opinion of those that read this information. Now I have to be very clear. The fighting in the eastern part of the country is not being conducted by the monitors of the mission. It is being conducted by the so-called DPR, the so-called LPR, and by the Ukrainian armed forces. Those have committed to end the fighting, and it's them that should be called upon to end this conflict. The mission is there to document their efforts and to register violations of their commitment, but it's the sides that need to end the fighting. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, we finished the press conference at this point. Thank you a lot for coming and looking forward to having you here next Friday.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.